What is up, fight fans? I am Jason Burgos for Sherdog.com, and joining me tonight is not only a talented fighter in the UFC's middleweight division, but he's also undoubtedly the best saxophone player in the entire company. Trust me, go check his Instagram, you'll know. On August 1st at the UFC Apex, he returns to the octagon on little over a week's notice to take on another uber vet of the sport in Ed Herman. And that man I speak of is the one and only GM3 himself, Gerald Meerschaert. Gerald, thank you for the time today.
Hey, Jason, thanks for having me, man.
My pleasure. Now, so you're taking this fight on a little more than a week's notice, like I mentioned. First, if you could put a percent on it, how much is taking this fight about getting like the bad taste out of your mouth of how the fight with Ian Heinisch went?
I mean, any fight I take at this point, 100% would be about that. You know, I mean, it's you hate losing, and I don't think I've ever lost that way in my career ever, let alone in the UFC. So it was, that it really sucked. I mean, I've been in there with a lot of big, powerful guys, and I've taken bad shots where, I was still conscious the whole time. I might have gotten TKO'd, but I'd never been, I was coming to at the end there, but I'd never, just gotten touched like that, not seen it coming. So that really was awful for me.
Is that like because you said it's something that's really never happened to you before, especially at the UFC level. Is it at all a shock to the ego or the confidence, or do you look at it as just one of those things, and that's how difficult it is to fight at this highest level?
Yeah, I made a tactical error and zigged when I should have zagged, basically, and I paid for it. It's something that's always in the back of your mind. If anything, it's the most positive thing I could take out of it is it's a reminder that, hey, this can happen. Like, it's 4-ounce gloves. Doesn't have to be the biggest puncher. Doesn't have to be, the best stand-up guy. Like, anyone can chuck one and catch you. So, good reminder to keep me on my toes, I guess.
Now you did say 100% it would be the reason, but I'm still curious. Maybe another percentage of it of doing this sneaking in is it the matchup on a level fighting Ed Herman, because you almost seem sort of like a new and improved Ed Herman 2.0 in ways, because there's clear similarities in your styles and how often both of you win, the win-loss record, staying busy, very active fighters in your career. And Ed has been in the game 17 years. You've been in it 13 years. And when this fight was announced, I love the matchup because there's such similarities, and you guys just gonna go in there and go after it. Is part of taking this on short notice, like, you just like this particular matchup with Ed?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the benefits, if I could say anything to fighters that are coming up. If you stay ready, you can take opportunities like this, and the UFC really loves that. So they've taken care of me for it, and, I'm glad I could step in there and also help a vet like Ed, who I respect very much, like, give him a chance to get some money and put some food on the table, so it works out for everybody. And like you said, we're very, very similar. The only thing that's different is we're opposite stance, but, both like walking forward. The stand-up's not like anything flashy, but it's, very technically sound, real basic stuff. Both fight good in the clinch, and he's also a black belt. He's not going to do any outlandish, crazy jiu-jitsu tricks, but it's, I'm going to get on top of you, I'm going to hit you, and when I see an opening, I'm going to try and choke you out. So, I agree with that. And it's funny for me because usually I'm the vet, right?
Yeah.
But this time I'm fighting a guy. This dude's been in the UFC longer than I've been fighting. So for me, that's very weird.
Now, and that's interesting also that you mentioned that you've been well taken care of. And, like, it's always been in vogue, but it just seems even more in vogue in a not even post-pandemic, because we're still in it, but a lot of short notice fights, jumping in there, going to Abu Dhabi, going to Vegas, and because the UFC does take care of guys on that level. But it almost seems frustrating that the one time you can get a little boost is you got to take these riskier fights on short notice. Do you feel that? Do you sense that in the gym? Do you sense that in the industry, that guys are even much more willing to take it as, discussion of making more money is out there? Because, hey, if I take this short notice fight, I'm doing them a favor, so they'll do me a favor. So this is the few times I can get a little bump and pay if I have to.
Well, I mean, not to sound too much like a company man, but like they weren't not taking care of me before either. But obviously, right now, for me, it's more like I love fighting. It's what I love doing. I want to fight as much as I can anyway. It doesn't matter what else is going on. However, as you pointed out, we got this pandemic going on, and a lot of things are shut down. So if I can find a way to like keep earning money and keep myself and my family financially stable, especially right now, there's not a lot of other options. They don't really have to go the extra mile because they're having fights just in the first place. They were the first ones to do it. So for me, in the position I'm in personally, I'm willing to take advantage of that. I always train all the time. If I'm training all the time, why wouldn't I fight all the time? It just doesn't make sense.
For a guy that does stay active, I always wonder this too, because I do a lot of work and interviews now recently with Submission Underground. You are a nasty submission artist, great ground guy. Why have we not seen Gerald Meerschaert in Submission Underground yet?
I don't know. I would love to do it. I don't know who I'd have to get in contact with or what their structure is and whatnot. And I mean, I know the concern there would be that there's a lot of really tough guys. You don't want to take an injury for Submission Underground when your main idea is fighting, but I'm not going to be shy about tapping if I'm in a compromised position. Like, I would go out there to compete to win for sure, 100%. But I'm also smart enough to know and good enough to know that if I'm caught in a certain spot, especially like a leg lock or something, I'm not going to let some dude tear my leg off and be like, all right, you got it. You trap me in the correct spot. You don't got to crank it anymore. I understand you won this time. I'll live to fight another day.
I know, Pete. I'll make the connection for you. I'll make the connection. We'll have Submission Underground fights very soon. Now, this fight will happen with Ed at light heavyweight. Are you looking forward to a very limited cut, if there really is one for you? And are there pros and cons? Because I've talked to guys that there's pros and cons, maybe going up and down different ways. Or is this kind of all a pro situation for you being a light heavyweight?
I think it's an all pro situation. Really, Ed fought most of his career at 185, and even the times he was at 205, it was more from being on the Ultimate Fighter, and like even then, in the earlier years, guys at 205 weren't monsters like they are now, for the most part. So I feel like we're really more of the same size, and he's 205 now because he's near the end of his career, he's older, and he doesn't feel like cutting weight anymore, and I get it. And he is he's technically and tactically sound enough where he can keep himself safe and still win. So even if it loses, he's not taking big damage. So it's like, why cut all that weight when you're, almost 40 years old? I probably would end up doing the same thing, honestly, once I get to that point. But so it's not like there's a huge size difference. Everything's pretty much, almost the same down the middle, except for experience level and, other than us being opposite stance. So I'm all for it.
I mean, and you're a pretty big guy, so I mean, somebody might see you in the street and think you're light heavyweight. What would you say is your walk around? Like, how much weight are you even going to cut, if any, for this?
Oh, I'm not too heavy. I'm like waking up at 212.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
I'm not on weight, but I'm not, super small or tiny right now either. I think I've had a few people ask me about like, are you going to stay at 205? Isn't it going to be so big? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, I think once you see us at the weigh-ins, I might even look bigger or at least in better shape. You know what I mean? But we're pretty much the same size.
Yeah. Because he has been around for so long, and you've probably seen him fight quite a few times, does it make it that much easier to take on him in particular on such short notice? Because you have a good idea what the hell you're getting into when you sign the contract. There's not a lot of things like, oh, well, this is a new guy in the company. I mean, he's, there's tons of tape on Ed Herman. You've probably seen him so many times. This is an easy thing to prepare for.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt for sure. I mean, if it was some unknown guy, like up and coming, what you guys say, blue chip prospect or whatever, that does some crazy stuff and you can't really get his fighting style down, that would be one thing. So that makes it a little bit easier. But that being said, I still had like a little over a week's notice, so it's not like I get to tailor a camp or anything, so to speak. It's just take tools that I have and modify them to give myself the best outcome.
A large sum of your wins for both of you are by submission. Some of your recent wins have been by submission. However, Ed actually hasn't scored a submission win in 8 years. A lot of his recent stuff has been decisions, knockouts. Do you think his submission game was dangerous for a lot of his career earlier in the time, back a little bit in the sport, but nowadays the grappling game has evolved a lot, and he may be in some hot water if he does go to the ground with someone like you who gets submissions all the time lately at the highest levels?
Well, I mean, separate from that, I think I can submit anyone. For MMA specifically, I feel like I got a really good, understanding of jiu-jitsu. But also, I think MMA's progressed definitely more to the striking side of it,
Okay.
and guys have gotten a lot better at managing distance and keeping away from takedowns in the first place. And even Ed in his last few fights, you can see like he'll get in the clinch a lot of times and he'll do really well. He still kind of does that old school like Greco boxing collar tie wrist ride, and he's controlling you, not looking for takedowns, but he's hitting little knees here and there. He's sneaking in punches, sneaking in elbows, and not in the traditional Muay Thai sense. So he does that very, very well.
Okay.
And I think he's found so much success there. It's like, why am I going to struggle with these big young kids trying to, take them down and submit them when I can just sit here, kind of lean into them and elbow them in the face?
Fair enough. Now, I am really fascinated to see how this fight plays out in the feed, because you guys are, like we mentioned earlier, similar in that kind of way. Your styles, you just have the different stances, like you said. And while neither of you are going to necessarily be confused with Israel Adesanya, neither of you are opposed to going in there, getting your hands dirty, going toe-to-toe with anybody. And neither of you are easy guys to stop. Neither of you have like a bunch of KO losses. That's like the crux of your losses, mostly decisions and submissions, stuff like that. What do you think of his stand-up, aside from the clinch like you just talked about, and do you feel you have some specific advantages of there on your own that, like maybe he's strong in the clinch, maybe you're strong somewhere else?
Yeah, I think I got a couple advantages here and there. He's not the fastest puncher, but he stays really basic and he doesn't break from what he does well. So I will say that about him. It's not going to be a lot of varied, nuanced punches, but what he does throw, he throws with mean intent, right? And he actually does a very good job of when he keeps the pressure, he'll let the kicks go a lot better than most guys. So he doesn't kick a lot, right? But even on lefties, he'll let that low inside kick go pretty well. And if anything, if he feels like he's compromised, he's going to look to get that clinch, or he'll just bite down and swing. And he throws hard enough where that can be a problem if you're not ready for it.
Now, that's pretty much the crux of the questions in terms of the fight. But you talked about being active, making that money, stuff like that. I wondered, is part of getting out there, being active, making that money, are we yet to build the studio so we can get Gerald Meerschaert plays the greatest hits on saxophone? When are we going to get that?
Well, I don't know if you can see my room back here, but I gotta fix the lighting a little bit. I gotta get some soundproofing on the walls, and maybe a bigger mic stand for this thing that I can adjust. So it's not too far off in the distant future, but it's not gonna happen tomorrow either.
Would we? Because I've talked to Brian Kelleher. He's arguably the best rapper in the UFC. Could there be a chance of a saxophone rap collabo with Brian Kelleher?
I would not mind laying down some samples for him. I'm not opposed to that idea. We can get my boy T-Wood on there too.
Oh.